So our final speaker of the day is Jeff Moyer, founder of Reveal Digital. Jeff has been successful bringing together libraries and special collection content to create entirely new digital collections that support research and teaching. At ProQuest, he conceived and executed the company's digital vault strategy for transforming print and microfilm-based content to digital. In addition to creating the framework for ProQuest's historical newspapers, he led the formation of the landmark Library Vendor Collaborative Effort Early English Books Online Text Creation Partnership, or EEBOTCP. Jeff also served as head of digital collection publishing at Gale. With Reveal Digital, he is building on his belief in the power of collaboration and establishing a new framework for creating digital collections.
Thank you, Tim. And I'm going to turn my stopwatch on right now so we can get everybody out on time. I guess before I get started, I did want to thank Tim and Alan Press for inviting me. Being the last speaker, I do have the benefit of thanking all the other speakers. This is my first seminar, Alan Press seminar, and I hope it's not going to be my last. It was a day well spent. And I want to thank Rebecca because I think she set the table well, and it's very exciting to think about an institutionally funded mandate to fund open access to scholarly research. I'm going to take a step back to sort of today's world. I've spent 20 years selling products and services to libraries, and so I look at libraries as customers. And so I'm going to talk about some emerging models that rely on libraries as central players in their success. And Reveal Digital, as one of those, doesn't vary from the central role that libraries play in the success of our venture. Before I get too far into it, I do want to confess this is my first Prezi. I did have to go cold turkey on bullet-pointed lists. I didn't do too well because there's a few in the Prezi presentation. But I did fall in love with the rotate frame feature of Prezi. So if anybody suffers from vertigo, just giving you an advance warning right now. So I do want to talk about a couple of emerging models. Maybe we'll do a show of hands just so I can know where to spend some time. How many of you are familiar with Knowledge Unlatched? You've heard of it? A few hands. Open Library of Humanities, a few different hands. And then Scope. A lot of hands. Okay, great. If we look at Knowledge Unlatched, and I'm starting in no particular order, Knowledge Unlatched, again, is targeting library dollars to fund the open access development of monographs in the humanities. So they serve a lot as a broker, working with publishers around a pilot. There's 28 monographs that made up their pilot project. So they worked with libraries to help define the scope of that pilot. Then they approached publishers to say, what would it take to make these monographs open access? And really, like all of these projects, it's driven by cost recovery. Can I cover the cost of creating that publication, whether it's an article or a book in this case? And then can I turn around and then go to libraries and get funding to cover those costs with the understanding that this material will become open access? So working with the publishers, they came up with a cost model for these 28 monographs. And then they made the assumptions that they could go out and get 200 libraries paying sort of a tiered approach to make those 28 titles open access. The good news is the pilot got fully funded. The better news is instead of 200 libraries, they got over 250. So the nice thing for those participating libraries, their level of investment dropped with every library that came in over the targeted of 200. So the pilot is launched. Those works, thanks to the publishers and to Knowledge Unlatched, are open access. One of the hosts for that is the HathiTrust. So you can go to HathiTrust, do a search on Knowledge Unlatched, and you'll find those 28 works freely available, downloadable as PDF files. Open Library of Humanities aspires to be the PLOS of humanities. This is sort of their definition of what they hope to be. Again, they're looking at, in this case, primarily article level information. They want to be that mega journal for humanities. They're working on a pilot. It's a UK-based endeavor. They tend to be focused right now on North American institutions, raising seed money by, again, going to the library community. It's relatively new. They've sort of been in the formative stages since 2013. They launched their funding call in January of 2015. They've got 32 commitments from libraries at various price points. So it's early to see where they go, where they end up. But again, as Rebecca pointed out, and particularly in the humanities and social sciences, shifting the cost of creating the content, those EPCs, away from the author and into an institution, in this case libraries, is their way of getting around the funding issues. And then scope, again, same thing. In this case, it's looking at the STM segment, in fact, a very narrow slice, high energy physics. It's a worldwide effort. They've got funding support globally from institutions and libraries and funding agencies. They've got over 5,000 articles now accessible in their platform that are all open access. But again, they're turning to the institution in lieu of author-funded APCs as a way of funding these projects. And what's interesting and what's challenging here is the length of time some of these projects take to go from an idea through to a really active project. And scope is no different than a lot of these. There's a lot of advanced work that has to take place to bring these open access initiatives to life. So Reveal Digital, our project is, again, is looking at libraries as a funding source. But we also look at libraries as a source of the material for the projects that we get involved in. At our core, we are an alternative funding model for funding the digitization, hosting of special collection type material. So this is the type of material that libraries have been collecting pretty much forever. So anything you can imagine, there's probably a good chance I can find a library who has collected it over the years. So everything from cookbooks to children's books to Islamic manuscripts to Jewish heritage collections. All of these materials have been collected for decades by libraries. A lot of them are discoverable. A lot of them have been digitized by libraries. But a majority have not. They're sort of hidden away within the academic institution. And so what we do is work with libraries, engage with libraries to define projects. And our sweet spot is really working with multiple libraries around the project. And then we determine the cost base for that project, try to figure out how many libraries we think might be interested in seeing this project come to fruition, and then actually do the outreach and the sales and promotion to those libraries. We try to tap into, and historically we've been tapping into the acquisition budgets of libraries. So it's an established channel that libraries are familiar with, and they've been very supportive of our project today. Our initial project is, and this is where the vertigo may come in, is Independent Voices. It's a multi-year project to digitize the full runs of 1,000 alternative press periodicals from the 60s, 70s, and 80s. That's sort of wonderful age of activism. We're working with dozens of libraries as sources for that material. One of the collection areas within Independent Voices is feminist publications, sort of the second wave of the feminist movement. And as an example, the two primary contributing libraries, Duke and Northwestern, have wonderful collections of feminist periodicals. but they have very few complete runs of those titles. And just by merging those two collections together in an aggregated way, we've been able to create full runs of dozens of feminist publications. Another area which I knew nothing about before we got involved with the project is during the Vietnam War era, almost every military base had a very active underground GI press, either on base or just off base in the coffee house. And there were organizations like the Vietnam Veterans Against the War that had very polished publications and newspapers related to the anti-war movement. But as polished as those were, there were an awful lot of mimeographed publications done at coffee houses produced for consumption by GIs in individual bases. We've been working with a guy named James Lewis, who's taken on his life mission to digitize all of those newspapers. And over the last 5 years, he's pretty much done it. This was in the last 2 years in Amsterdam, wrapping up the digitization. But we think, and he thinks, he's got 98% of all of the GI newspapers produced during the Vietnam War era. And I think those papers and the people involved in them can take a lot of credit, I think, and he espouses it, that the GI press, along with the anti-war movement, had a great impact on the military's move away from a professional or from a volunteer army to a professional army. So we're excited to have this collection as part of Independent Voices. LGBT publications has a strong and vocal community. We're very excited to see their publications included in the collection. And then we also have sort of traditional underground press publications. We tend to get inspired by the people involved in these publications. Whether we go to full frontal nudity on our website for us, I don't think we'll go that far. But it's always exciting to deal with people who are passionate about their history and the involvement they had in the alternative press. Part of the activities that we're involved in producing this collection is tracking down the owners of these publications and getting their permission to include it under a CC license to be part of this collection. So we're thankful for the network of people involved in these publications that point us to the right people to get their permission. So working with libraries, I know as far as Reveal Digital, we work with them as collectors and curators of information. But really the digital revolution that has hit libraries and publishers is changing the roles of librarians and libraries. On the digital side, they are driving the call to standards. They are driving the adoption of institutional repository on campuses. They are investors in different sorts of models and approaches. They're very good, and we've been blessed to experiment with new alternative ways of seeing the material digitized and made accessible under open access models. So we're very grateful to libraries who have invested in Reveal Digital. I think the other alternative models that rely on library funding probably feel the same way. The librarians are also actively involved in outreach on their campuses. They're big proponents of open access, and in a number of cases, librarians are leading the charge, the publishing charge, the digital publishing charge on campuses today. So I think there's a lot to be parallels between almost the open access movement and the Occupy Wall Street movement. And this is a popular poster from OWS. And there's sort of a story behind this. And there was a part-time subject bibliographer and librarian at NYU who wasn't quite sure he was an activist, although now he has 3 or 4 names, so I think he qualifies as an activist. But he realized very early in the OWS movement that there probably needs to be someone sort of keeping track of what's being produced and archiving that. And he took it on his responsibility to begin to pull that work together. So Jeremy, sort of identifies with sort of this being in a space where a movement is going on, and understanding that something much bigger than OWS is happening, but it needs to be archived, it needs to be preserved. So we're very excited for what he did. We take it as an inspiration for what we're trying to do with some of the special collection material at libraries. So sort of looking at that and looking at where we are today, where we've been, and where we're going tomorrow. For Reveal, I think we've gotten a good, strong proof of concept. I know we are a for-profit company, behaving in theory and right now in practice as a not-for-profit company. And so I know we are looking at ways in which we can partner with a not-for-profit or taking that step to be a not-for-profit. And I think where we'll go, we had visions at one point of being sort of the Kickstarter of library special collections, but I think we underestimated the amount of work any of these projects will take. And so I think where we end up as a company and where we can help libraries is really looking at sort of narrow thematic scenes within their collections and doing multi-project type collections where we can engage multiple libraries and build sort of strong communities of interest, both from sources as well as funding libraries, to see these collections move to open access. Great. Thank you very much.